Hello, world! Welcome to another special episode of Unlocking Miracles, Janergy's Guide to Life, Love, and Leadership. How are you guys? This is a special episode because I chose to pick somebody who will inspire us, motivate us, and probably encourage us to move forward with life, especially for business owners and professionals who will be listening to this podcast. How are you? I hope you are doing and enjoying the summer heat. Okay, so I'll be introducing our guest, and in the next, actually, this is one of the miracles that happened in my life as a speaker, a host, a trainer. Way back in 2021, I was given the opportunity to learn more about BNI. And I had that opportunity of inviting the founder of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. So in this episode, I'll be sharing to you again my interview with him, my exclusive interview with him, so that you get to know him more, his wisdom, pick up some nuggets of wisdom from him, and be able to inspire you to move forward with life. And I am sure that you will be guided well with this man. He is really an idol for me in terms of not just in business, but in terms of his personality. So, friends, without further ado, let's listen to this episode of my interview with no less than our founder in BNI, Dr. Ivan Meister. We are privileged to have with us tonight Dr. Ivan Misner, the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization founded in 1985. This organization now has over 10,400 chapters through every populated continent of the world. Last year alone, BNI generated 11.5 million referrals, resulting in more than $16.2 billion worth of business for its members. Ivan is from the University of Southern California, and he's a New York Times best-selling author who has written 26 books, including one of his latest books, Who's in Your Room and Infinite Giving. He's also a columnist for entrepreneurship.com and has been a university professor as well as member of the board of trustees for the University of Laverne. Called the father of modern networking by both Forbes and CNN, Dr. Meissner is considered to be one of the world's leading experts on business networking and has been a keynote speaker for major corporations and associations throughout the world. And he has been featured in LA Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, as well as numerous TV and radio shows, including CNN, the BBC, and the Today shows on NBC. Among his many awards, he has been named Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross and has been recipient of the John C. Maxwell Leadership Award. Wow. He's proud that he and his late wife, Elizabeth, are the co-founders of the BNI Charitable Foundation. They also reached empty nester status after happily raising their 3 children. Oh, and in his spare time, he is also an amateur magician and a black belt in karate. Wow, friends, help me welcome live here on Hero Spotlight, Dr. Ivan Meissner.
Thank you, Janice. I appreciate it.
Hi, Ivan.
Hello.
How are you and where are you right now?
Somebody's been listening to my podcast.
Of course.
You know why I started having Priscilla ask me that question? I had someone write in once and say, "Oh, you're probably sitting on a beach with a Mai Tai. You're not really, working the business." And so I started having Priscilla ask where I was so that people could see. I certainly before COVID, I was traveling to all over the world to help BNI regions. And now I'm sort of zooming all over the world, but so the travel has started again.
Wow, that's great. First off, I'd like to ask you, Dr. Ivan, or should I call you Ivan?
Oh yeah, please call me Ivan.
Okay, Ivan, what are you grateful for today? And what did you have for breakfast?
Well, I'll start with the latter. I make an egg scramble on most mornings with lots of vegetables, tomatoes, mushrooms, spinach, sometimes asparagus, and some goat cheese and eggs. And I make my own breakfast every morning after I exercise, and I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful. I'll be leaving next week for Antarctica, which
Wow.
I'm really excited about. I've never, obviously, I mean, most people haven't been there. I'm headed there next week, and I'm really excited about planting a BNI flag on Antarctica.
Wow, that's amazing. I've never been to Antarctica as well. So that truly is as an exciting adventure for you. Okay, so let me ask you this first question. For those who are watching us right now, and this is the very first time that we'll encounter Ivan, can you please give us a brief background journey of you as an entrepreneur, how you started, the process that you underwent to become successful in your field?
Yeah. Well, I was a management consultant when I started BNI. I had gone to a lot of networking groups. I went to some that were very mercenary. Everyone was trying to sell to me. I'd leave those meetings and I felt like I'd been slimed. I needed to go home and get a shower. Really didn't like those groups. I went to other groups that were very social. It was happy hour and hors d'oeuvres and nobody was doing business. I didn't like those groups. And I wanted something that had a focus on business, but wasn't mercenary, and had a focus on relationships, but wasn't totally social. And the glue that would hold those two things together was BNI's principal core value, which I incorporated into the company early on. This idea of giver's gain, this idea that if I help you, you'll help me. We'll all do better as a result of it. And I was really surprised at how BNI took off. I mean, I'd like to tell you that I had this vision of an international organization in that first, 6 to 10 months, but I was just looking for referrals for my consulting practice and wanted to help my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And people kept coming to me and asking me if I would help them open up another group and another group and another group. And at the end of the year, we had 20 chapters, 20. And I really didn't have a plan. And it was at that point that I sat down and created my plan to scale BNI. And we now have over 10,000 chapters in more than 70 countries around the world.
Yes, wow, that is really something like a great blessing to be able to put up an international organization. Since we're here in Hero Spotlight, I'd like to know, who is your hero that inspired or influenced you to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I think I've had sort of an entrepreneurial spin most of my life. My parents, I had two great parents. I grew up in a pretty low income family neighborhood, but I had great parents who certainly supported my entrepreneurial ideas as a young man and supported me going to school, at least emotionally, if not financially. In business, I'd say one of the first heroes that I had was Michael Gerber, who wrote the book, The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth. And, I read the E-Myth after I started BNI. And Michael in the E-Myth talks about working on your business, not in your business, and many other things that were very important for me in my early days as an entrepreneur, certainly with BNI. And I was on a radio show once, and somebody asked me the same question. Who was somebody who inspired you early in your career? And I mentioned Michael and the E-Myth and talked about the things I learned from his book. And guess who called me the next day? Michael.
Wow.
He called me up at my office and he said, I was driving in my car and on a radio station and I heard you talk about the E-Myth, and I just wanted to thank you at that time, the book was probably 20 years old. And now it's 36, 37 years old. And and Michael and I spoke, and he wanted to meet. And the following week, I was headed up to my lake house to spend some time with BNI key executives, and I invited him to join us, and he did. And I've gotten to know Michael really, really well. If you go to my blog at ivanmisner.com, you'll see several videos that I've done with Michael, and he's become a good friend. It's really interesting how sometimes, your mentors, your virtual mentors, people who you've read their books, listened to their audio materials, listened to their interviews, can actually become real life mentors. And that's what Michael is for me.
Yeah, it's like an e-myth happening right now. I get to speak to you live.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Talking about being an entrepreneur, what for you is the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think being able to make your own decisions, make your own mistakes, figure out how to resolve them, having that freedom is a blessing. It's also very difficult because, if things go wrong, it's all your fault, basically. And so, but I like being an entrepreneur. I can't imagine not having had the journey that I had. I have a good friend who's a BNI director. His name's Michael, and he was teaching elementary school kids. It was a vocation day, and he was there on vocation day as the entrepreneur, the business owner. And these kids were like 10. Well, how do you explain what an entrepreneur is? And he had this great thing that he said to these kids. He said, you want to know the coolest thing about being an entrepreneur? And they're like, yeah, what is it? He said, you have no boss. And they're like, no boss? Really? Yeah, you have no boss. You're the boss. And so these kids, man, he had them in the palm of his hands, talking about what it's like to run your own business. And so I certainly think that's a great piece of entrepreneurship.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I will tell that to my niece.
Yes.
So to inspire her to become an entrepreneur someday. Okay, talking about the situation that we are in the pandemic still. Some countries are really struggling in terms of coping up with the COVID-19. How are you becoming a hero yourself today in time of pandemic? And can you tell us about the greatest challenge that you have overcame during this time?
Well, look, how would I describe myself as a hero? I think anyone who calls themselves a hero is probably not a hero. So I wouldn't talk of myself in those terms. That's up to other people. Here's how I would describe the general concept that you're describing in terms of my impact and others' impacts on people. We all have people who are in our story, people who've made a difference in our life. I've already mentioned two, my parents, both my parents, so three, and Michael. There are other people that have made a difference in my life. So we all have people who are in our story. The thing I think is more important, though, than who's in our story is whose story are we in? Whose life have we made a difference in? How have we changed them? How have we helped them? How have we been there to support them? That is meaningful. And so I think entrepreneurial heroes are people who are in other people's stories, who have been there to support and help others become successful. And so to me, it's not who's in your story, it's whose story are you in. And that's what I think makes a great person.
Wow, that's great. It's not about you. It's about the other person and how you are impacting the life.
Exactly. Yeah. It's how are you impacting them? Are you making a difference? Look, we all make a difference in other people's lives. Not always a good difference, right? Not always a good difference. And it's amazing to me how little things we say, offhanded comments, can be supportive or unsupportive of someone. And we may not even give it much thought, but it can make a big difference, good or bad, in people's lives. I have a friend, a BNI director, his name is Phil, and Phil was really depressed one day, and he mentioned something on Facebook about how difficult people can be and how they complain constantly. And my late wife brought it to my attention. She said, hey, you might want to take a look at what Phil posted because he sounds really down. And so, Phil's a friend. He's a BNI director. I've known him for many, many years. And so I got online. I saw his post. And all I said was, hey, I understand what you're going through more than most people. And I also understand that you do an amazing job. Hold on to that. People complain. This is what I told them. People complain as though it's an Olympic event. It's not, and I said to him, nobody's ever built a statue to a critic. You're making a difference in people's lives. So just know that. And that was it. And he dropped me a note and said, thank you. And about a month later, he sent me a photograph, and all he said in the subject line was, you never know what difference you make. And he had a photograph of what I said to him on Facebook. He blew up, put it in a frame, and had it on his wall. And it was like, wow, I vaguely remember saying those things. And that's what I mean by the things that you say to people can have a major impact on their experience of life, good or bad. And so how do you want to be in people's story? Do you want to be a positive influence in their story or a negative one?
Of course, you want to be positive.
I do. And I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to be negative.
Yeah.
It's human nature sometimes to just automatically default to the negative, to the complaining. And we really have to strive hard not to do that.
Yeah. In relation to what you said, what do you do to turn around your emotion, your feeling, whenever you see yourself complaining?
Yeah.
Can you give us a tip on what you do?
Yeah, look, so everybody, gets down. I get down. Everyone gets down. And, the question is, where do you live? Do you live in that place, or are you capable of pulling yourself out of that place? And so we're all there. I've been known to throw myself a pity party where I feel bad for myself over something or another. And it is important to pull yourself out. And for me, there's several things I do. The first thing is I microdose the news. I do not spend a lot of time on the news, and I don't watch the news anymore because I don't know what it's like there. But I can tell you in the United States, it's not news. It's opinion stations. They're not news stations. They're opinion stations. I remember the day where a broadcaster would get on and he'd start giving his opinion, and there'd be this item across the screen that would come across that says, this is the opinion of our host, not necessarily the opinion of our station. And so I knew I was watching someone's opinion, not necessarily fact. Today, in many countries around the world, certainly in the United States, it's the opinion stations. And so I just got tired of listening to all the opinions. And so what I do is I pick up the news off my phone, off of apps. And I'll read a news item on a very liberal news app, and I'll read a news item on a very conservative news app. So I'll read the same subject on different news apps and come to the conclusion generally that the truth lies somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing is microdose the news and pick and choose. I mean, I need to know what's going on in the world. I can't just ignore the world, but I don't sit and just let the opinion stations bombard my mind and what sells negative. And so it's all negative stuff, complaining. Yeah, I don't want to live in that place. So what else I do? I reverse that. So I'll read apps, but I go to bed almost every night watching funny stuff. Not cat videos, although yeah, I have maybe watched one or two, but funny comedians or talk shows that are really just have a funny guest on, so that I go to bed almost every night uh, after laughing. I mean, sometimes I laugh so. Last night I was laughing so hard my sides hurt. I had to pause the video because my sides hurt. So I try to put stuff in my head. What you put in your brain comes out in your behavior.
Yes.
I really believe that. What you put in your brain comes out in your behavior. And so I try to put positive things into my brain. I try to do things to help other people whenever possible. I try to, I think an entrepreneur is either working in their flame or working in their wax. And when they're in their flame, they're on fire, they're excited, they love what they do. You can hear it in their voice, you can see it in the way they behave. When they're working in their wax, it just takes all their energy away. And you can hear that in their voice and you can see that in the way they behave. So I try to really do things that are in my flame when I feel down. So that, and by the way, this is my flame. I love doing interviews. I love pouring into people my experience of the world. And so I try to do more of that if I'm feeling down. So, I mean, those are some of the things. One other thing, I always have margins. And I talk about it in my book, Who's in Your Room. Always have margins, just like in the pages in a book, where a book, there's always you probably can't see it, but there's always margins in the book. I think margins are the free time that you have to really recharge your batteries. And so I always have time margins. I go to my hot tub. I'll go out on the boat. I have a telescope. I may, look at the planets. Things that I watch TV. A lot of people are surprised, but I love movies. There's certain TV shows. So these are the things I do to recharge my batteries. They work for me. Will they work for you? No, maybe not. But you have to find what works for you to get you out of that depression or feeling bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, wow. Those are great tips for us. I totally can relate to those things that, like, 2 weeks ago, our family, we went to the province in Bicol, Legazpi, where Mayon volcano can be seen. It's a perfect cone. It's a landmark here in the Philippines, and it was a great opportunity. We didn't rode a airplane. We did the land travel for about 12 hours. And, and we get to see lots of trees, mountains, and it really is something delightful to the eye. For quite some time, we're contained inside our rooms in our house, right? And it is something that really
Get out,
recharges us.
Yeah, good.
And
That's what I mean by margins. And if that's a 12-hour drive that's not my idea of a margin, but it's your idea of a margin.
Yes.
And that's what counts is, what is it that brings you joy, that makes you happy? And whatever that is, as long as it doesn't hurt other people, then that's what you need to do.
Since it's Christmas season here in the Philippines, you know what? We start our Christmas here in September. And definitely people would be needing more income, more money to buy gifts and food to celebrate. What are some ways you could suggest to increase income in the new normal?
Well, I think that it's very important now to pivot, to really think about how you can pivot in business and take your business and do it in a slightly different way. I mean, I'll give you an example or two. One was in March of 2020, when most of the world, certainly the United States, basically shut down. And one of our BNI members was a furniture reupholstery business. And she had half a dozen employees and reupholstered furniture. Well, that wasn't exactly a necessary business. It wasn't a business that was necessary to continue operating. And so she had to let go of all of her employees. And she did a one-to-one with another BNI member by Zoom. And he said, now this is March of 2020. And we, in most countries, as we did in the US, we ran out of face masks and medical masks. And he said to her, he said, you have a lot of cloth in your building, don't you? And she said, I literally have tons of cloth. He said, have you thought about becoming a COVID mask manufacturing business? And she said, no. He said, well, why don't you test it and see, if you can make masks out of the cloth that you have. So she made 100 masks, Janice. She made 100 masks. She gave them to 50 people, 2 to everyone, along with her card. And she gave them to a lot of BNI members and friends and some clients. And she said, one is a gift to you. The second one, would you give it to a nurse, a doctor, a senior center, anyone who might need masks to operate? And so she gave 50 of them out. She gave 100 out to 50 people. She was inundated with orders. She was able to hire all of her people back. And they all, socially distanced physically. I hate to call it social distancing. They physically distanced in the warehouse, and she became a COVID mask manufacturing business. See, that's what I mean by pivot. I'll give you a real short, another short example. In Australia, we had a brewery who was a BNI member, and someone in doing a one-to-one said, you have a lot of alcohol, don't you? And he said, yeah, vats of alcohol. And he said, have you thought about being a hand sanitizer, transitioning, pivoting to being a COVID hand sanitizing business? And he said, no, I hadn't thought about that. And so he pivoted to making hand sanitizer from the alcohol and was able to hire all of his people back. And so that's what I mean is you got to think about how can you pivot your business? What can you do? Because, and it's not just now. By the way, stuff like this is going to happen again. Yeah. Industries will change, technology advances, there'll be some other illness. There's going to be, this isn't the only time this is going to happen in our lifetime. Might be the only time we have a virus like this, but we're going to all need to be nimble and prepared to pivot. And so we need to be forward thinking. I actually wrote an article in 2018 that's published on Entrepreneur. It's still up on Entrepreneur. And it basically said the future of face-to-face is online. In 2018, I wrote that. And people are like, no, so you started an in-person network. How could you believe that? Because of the technology. The technology is advancing. Mixed reality, holographic images, 3D technology. I thought it was inevitable. COVID just expedited the inevitable for how we network. But everyone needs to think about how they can pivot if necessary.
Yeah, great, amazing stories. True. We also have similar stories here in the Philippines of people who pivoted their business and really had to make sure that they keep the people that they have.
So yeah, I'd love to hear an example either now or offline of how someone pivoted, because these are the stories that I'm always asked about.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely compile those stories and send them to you. So
great.
You can have them as one of your episodes in your podcast.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, give me 2 or 3 really good ones.
Okay. For our next question, Ivan, in BNI, we believe in the philosophy of giver's gain, and that this is the law of reciprocity, which means that what goes around comes around. In your book, Infinite Giving, together with Greg Davis and Julian Lewis, you talked about 7 principles of giver's gain. Can you share them to our viewers and highlight one principle you really advocate?
Just one. Okay, I'll give you one. So the 7 principles for giver's gain that I talk about in Infinite Giving start with who's in your light, which is really part of the concept of who's in your room. It's about, who do you surround yourself with in life? Because the people in your room will make a difference on who you are. So who's in your light is the first one. And you have to have discernment about the people that you let close to you and the things that you let close to you. Go back to the news. In the book, we talk about the fact that you got to microdose the news because it's so negative. You don't want that in your head. Second thing is to give without expectation. That's what giver's gain is, really, is giving freely to other people that you have allowed into your room that you feel close to. Give more than expected. Under promise and over deliver when you're giving and helping people. But at the same time, and here's the next one, give what you can afford. Don't give more than you can afford to give in terms of time or effort or money. We talk about it as in give from your saucer, not your cup. And as we become more successful, our success overflows. We have the opportunity to help people more, to do more for others. And what we recommend is that you give freely from your saucer, but not from your cup, not what, truly give what you can afford. It's okay to gain is another one of the principles. Sometimes people are so focused on giving that they forget that it's called giver's gain. It's about helping others so that they help you in return. And that whole section is about discernment again. It's about understanding that being an infinite giver does not mean you're an infinite victim. It's okay to receive as well as to give. The other is to stay humble, because as you become more successful, it's easy to lose that humility. Humble people don't think less of themselves. They just think of themselves less. And that's one of the important principles. And the last principle is gratitude. And gratitude is not, showing gratitude is not new age psychobabble. It's science. There are many studies, Harvard, Yale, the Cicero Group, Claremont University, many universities and research institutes have shown over and over again that people who show gratitude are more successful. Mm-hmm. And that the people they surround themselves with, the people they show gratitude, those people are happier and more engaged in the process of the business that they're in. And so gratitude's not new age psychobabble, it's science. And these are the 7 principles of giver's gain.
It summarizes everything that I know about BNI. These are the things that we try to really manifest every now and then. I asked you, what is the one principle that you advocate?
They're all so important. And, we talk about the fact that you have to use all 7, that if you only pull one out, it's not going to work. But I think the one that may surprise people is the humility one. To me is really important, because I have seen so many people that as they become more and more successful, they get less and less humble. They have less humility. And I really, when I meet people, I want people to walk away thinking, wow, he's like a regular guy. That they don't feel nervous talking to me after they start talking to me. And that's important to me. I think, and I often, I think of myself as an ordinary guy. I do believe that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, but I really think of myself as an ordinary person, and I think that surprises a lot of people.
Yeah. Speaking of being with people who are successful and humble, can you share to us how was your experience being with Richard Branson in Necker Island?
Well, Branson is, I think, the poster child for humility. He is such an easygoing person to talk to. He talks to his staff the same way he talks to millionaires.
Wow.
He treats them with just as much respect as he treats millionaires around him. And I really find that amazing. You know, when I was on Necker Island just a few weeks ago, and on one of there's a bar that sometimes the Necker team will take people to this bar called Willie T's, and Branson joins, and so you know it's a floating bar on the ocean, and you know he goes there, and so people you know they're at the bar and they're in walks Richard Branson, but there's a sign up in the bar, and I'm gonna write about this soon. It says, "Be like Branson." This is a sign up in the bar. Be
Wow.
like Branson. Be kind.
Ooh.
I think that's a great testament to how he treats people.
Be like Branson, be kind.
Be
Yes.
kind.
I also believe in the saying that it's better to be kind than to be right.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, Ivan, this is a personal question. I am
Okay.
launching a new chapter in BNI called Orion. And being a lead launch ambassador, what tips and advice can you share to me to be effective in this role?
So, you know, follow the system. Um, trying to, you know, finding exceptions to the system does not make you exceptional.
Mm.
And all too often, people will say, well, we're different, or this chapter is different, or we operate differently. You know, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. And oftentimes they just say that because they don't want to do the hard work necessary in order to be successful. And the truth is, the secret to success without hard work is still a secret. I don't know what it is. It's hard to you know really achieve success, and so don't make exceptions. Follow the program, follow the system. Don't start pulling. It's like, you know, I see people who they want to pull stuff out of any successful program, whether it's BNI or something else. They want to start pulling stuff out, and it's like having a plane and or having a car. It's like having a car and saying, well, do we really need the wheel? I mean, you know, what about this tire? Do we really need that tire? And you start pulling stuff off the car, it's not going to run. And so I think one of the most important things is to really follow the program. And it's okay if someone isn't going to take that ride with you. It's okay for them to not participate if they're not going to follow the program.
Great. Thanks for those tips, Ivan.
Yeah.
Your final message to all our viewers watching right now so that they can uplift themselves during these trying times.
Yeah. Yeah. I think today more than ever, you need your network. Today more than ever, BNI is making a difference in people's lives because it is a group of like-minded professionals who are there to help and support one another. I think hope is more powerful than fear. That hope plus a plan plus action will lead you to success. And I think so many people are having success in BNI because BNI is in fact a beacon of hope in a sea of fear. And our philosophy of giver's gain is more than a phrase. It's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. When it's applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it'll change the world. And that's my message for you. Thanks for inviting me to.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ivan, for gracing us with your presence and sharing to us valuable tips and wisdom to move forward with our businesses. As a way of thanking you, I will be sending you a signed copy of my latest book, Tatay is My Hero. This is Father is My Hero. So I'll be sending you a copy of this one. And there you have it, friends. We are about to end our show. And thank you very much for joining us. We hope that you gained fresh insights from our discussion with our special guest, Dr. Ivan Misner. There you have it, friends. You have listened to the interview, my exclusive interview with Dr. Ivan Misner. This was shot I think 2, 3 years ago, and still his message is still applicable up to this day. So I hope you found value in this interview and in this special episode. Look forward to more interviews. I have lined up some special guests in this podcast so that we'll talk more about miracles that are happening in our lives and unlock more miracles in our lives. I hope that I could get to catch up with you sometime if you feel that this episode or this podcast is helpful for you. Please do subscribe, rate, and follow this podcast and share this to your friends and family so that they too will be blessed. God bless everyone. See you in the next one. Bye.